My name is Anthony Quinn. I'm the Chief Community and Benefits Officer at CARP. Really delighted to have you along with us today. This is our first webinar with our relatively new national CARP recommended insurance partner, CAA. And I'm hoping this will become a series of informative webinars for our members right across the country. So my duty this morning is to introduce you to our moderator, and that is Nadia Matos. Nadia has more than 15 years of experience in media, TV news, and public speaking, making her a gifted communicator who brings ideas to life. Throughout her career, Nadia has held various roles in TV news, radio, TV production, and public speaking. A former award-winning journalist, she has a talent for discovering the core of a story and demonstrating why it matters to the audience. Currently, Nadia serves as the Manager of External Communications at CAA Club Group, one of Canada's most distinguished and recognizable brands, and a terrific new partner of CARP. So welcome, Nadia, and thank you very much for joining us today.
And thank you, Anthony. Hello and good day to everyone, and thank you for joining us from across the country. We want to welcome you to their latest CAA CARP webinar. My name is Nadia Matos, as mentioned, and I'm your moderator for today's broadcast. Today, we're talking about traveling safely. Whether you're a snowbird about to leave the country for a few months or a jet setter on a trip for a few weeks, we know that Canadians love to travel, but they want to do it safely. That is why we've assembled some of the top experts at CAA to talk about the research you need to do before you book, what information you need to know after you book, before you travel and while on vacation, and then of course, when you return home. To help us decipher it all is our CAA travel safety experts, Susan Postma, Regional Manager for CAA, Neil Henderson, Director of Product and Pricing for Orion Travel Insurance, a CAA-owned company, and Elliot Silverstein, Director of Government Relations for CAA Insurance. Let's jump right in. Susan, post-pandemic travel is booming. Can you give us a sense of what's happening in the travel industry right now?
I think you're totally right. It is booming. We're seeing travel like 2019 numbers. People have a demand to go. They're really looking to do either a domestic trip or their bucket list trip. So what we're seeing is lots of Europe. People are looking to go to Italy. We had a group go to Italy last summer. The tour director said it was 5 times the number of tourists coming to Italy. Solo travel, very popular. We're seeing more and more suppliers offer solo groups and solo tours, and some waiving of single supplement and alternatives as a single or solo traveler. We're really seeing a coming together of multi-generational, multi-family groups. They're looking to connect and travel together. Wedding destination season is back. So it's really very busy. And there's a lot of preparedness as a traveler that you would want to have as you go into either planning these trips or joining in on a group that's already planned.
Right. So, I mean, I'd imagine that planning all these great bucket trips and these, once in a lifetime things, or, making memories, a lot of people have some concerns, whether it be about COVID or about travel advisories. How do you determine what countries are safe to travel to?
Travel agents and travelers, we resource global affairs. We resource the information that's provided from the Government of Canada. Stays very up to date. They provide really clear guidelines as to what those advisories look like. So we always encourage a traveler and the travel agent to be informed, up to date, resource those materials. And as well, ask those questions. It's okay to ask those questions about what does it look like? What has been the experience? What have we heard in the industry as to what it's like out there? But really, knowledge is really your best preparedness. And when you go to Global Affairs or the Government of Canada websites, it really gives you some good guidelines as to how to best select where you want to travel and how you can travel and should you travel.
Okay. I mean, I know when I book my own travel, I'm pretty nervous about, those flight cancellations or travel advisories. We've heard so much lately about that. What can people do to ensure that they avoid as many headaches as possible on their side?
I think on their side, if you are planning your trip yourself, it's really important to take a look at those flights that you're booking. Take a look at the connection times. The advice to get to the airport early remains. Get to that airport 2 hours early for domestic, 3 hours early for international. Watch your connection times. Take a look at what your trip cancellation interruption insurance is. Take a look at what the penalties would be. So I think it's very important that when you look into that, really try and avoid as best you can. You can't always, but if you have some preparedness, we really recommend that you add your phone number and your email address to the file of your booking. Register with that airline, in particular with your cell phone number if you're traveling with it, to receive in the moment text updates. You can download their app and put your trip into that app. It gives you a lot of that necessary information. If you choose not to travel with that, you can certainly use your email address, but staying connected and really being in the moment to the best that you can as to what's happening with your flight is really key as you set out on your journey.
We need to be connected, I guess, Susan. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right?
That's true.
Great tips. From the moment we start thinking about going on a trip, we research the country, the resort or hotel, the attractions, the restaurants. And travel insurance is often left as a last minute add-on. Well, I'll get it done just a couple days before I leave, or thinking that we can get it done when we're on vacation. Neil, I have a question for you. CA's recommendation is to factor in travel insurance as soon as you book. Why is that?
Thanks, Nadia. Yes, the most important thing is that you have your travel insurance in place before you depart on your trip. After you depart, it is too late. But buying in advance, however, provides a certain amount of peace of mind. Travel insurance is not something that you want to forget. It's why we say it's best to purchase when you're in the traveling mindset, when you're in the process of booking, it's top of mind. That way it's done, and it's not something that you have to worry about forgetting. But buying in advance also provides you time to interact with your doctor if you need it. Sometimes you may want to talk to your doctor about your health. There might be completion of a medical questionnaire involved. You may want your doctor's help going through that. And these days, it seems like it's difficult to get time with your doctor. So buying well in advance ensures that you have the time to get that appointment booked and spend some time with your doctor. Another consideration, though, is protecting that investment that you make in your trip, which can be substantial. I'm thinking of some of the larger cruises that you might take. Nobody books a trip thinking that they may have to cancel, but it can happen. And purchasing cancellation insurance ensures that that investment you're making in the trip is protected. And so you want to have that cancellation coverage in place as soon as you put your first deposit down on that trip so that the money is protected. And with CAA travel insurance from Orion, cancel for any reason is an additional benefit that's included at no additional cost when you buy your cancellation insurance within that 72 hours of making that initial trip deposit.
Yeah, because if something happens and you've purchased your trip and then something happens on a global wide scale, then that impacts, and you haven't purchased travel insurance, that impacts, right? And your ability to be secure and protect your financial investment.
Absolutely, but it's also things that happen just individually, whether it's a family member that could get sick unexpectedly. Anything can go wrong. It's totally unplanned. You book your trip with best of intentions, full intentions of going, but you do want to have that investment protected.
Neil, can you please explain very, very quickly, we don't want to spend too much time, but what are the different types of travel insurances and what does each one cover?
Well, I could spend hours talking about travel insurance. I happen to enjoy it quite a bit. So there are several different types of travel insurance. I think the most common one that everybody's going to be very familiar with is emergency medical insurance. And that protects you from costs that are associated with any unexpected illnesses or injuries that may happen, not just outside of Canada, but also outside of your home province. And that's important too. And perhaps as important as protecting you from those unexpected costs, though, is the emergency medical assistance that comes with it. And that's going to help you navigate a foreign healthcare system. And that can be challenging if you're in the middle of a crisis, especially if there's language barriers. And that emergency medical assistance is going to help you navigate that, make sure there's no breakdowns in communication, and make sure that you're getting the treatment and care that you need to get you to keep you safe and get you healthy again. But there's also non-medical products as well. And I think thanks in part to the pandemic, unfortunately, a lot more travelers are more aware of these other coverages. I've already mentioned cancellation, but cancellation and interruption insurance is what I'm thinking of off the top. And that protects the financial investment, as I mentioned. So should you need to cancel your trip or come home early from your initial planned return home. That's going to help you recover those non-refundable prepaid expenses that you made on your trip that, you don't want to lose that investment. But if you have to come home early, there's other costs that are unexpected. Change fees involved in a flight, having to book a hotel by the airport or deal with some, meals to go along with that if you're waiting for a return flight home. And your interruption insurance is going to protect you there. There's also baggage loss and delay insurance, and that's going to help protect your personal items should your baggage be lost or stolen. It's going to help with replacement costs of important things and even help with the replacement of important travel documents.
Okay. So how does travel insurance work when you are frequently going to be traveling? How does that work?
So all of the coverages that I mentioned above there, really, they're all available in either a single trip product, which that's for the one trip that you're planning to take, and the coverage is enforced throughout that trip and it ends when you return home. But you can also buy these protections for an unlimited number of trips in a given calendar year, and that's typically referred to as multi-trip or annual plans. So while those annual plans will cover an unlimited number of trips that you're going to take in that year, they typically cover a certain number of days. You may pick a 30-day plan that you purchased or a 60-day plan. Now, if any one of the trips that you're going to take in that year exceeds that 30 days that you've purchased, you can buy top-up coverage if necessary.
Okay. Interesting. Very good. Thank you for that. Now, Elliot, we're going to switch gears. We're going over to you, Elliot. What about traveling domestically? Do you need travel insurance when you're traveling within Canada's borders?
You absolutely do. You need to consider it depending on the type of travel that you're doing. As Neil was providing some great highlights about the various types of products that are out there, really you need to think about that for domestic travel as well, because most times you think about it internationally. I'm going on a plane, I'm going elsewhere. You may need this type of coverage even if you're doing a road trip. So for example, if you're going into another province, there may be in your government health plan certain coverages for minor ailments that would be covered through your government health plan. However, if you encounter major situations, for example, you may need to be airlifted back to your home province, you may not be covered. You may be on the hook for that. So it really is trying to think about it because, again, the value of the trip is very important. People are spending a lot of money. They're saving up their time and their cash to do these trips. You don't want to run into a situation where you're beginning to enjoy it and then have to switch gears and pay for a flight back home because you realize that your health plan is not covering it. So really, what is most important is talking to a travel professional, explain where you're going, what you're doing, and really understand what the options are, because for a small amount of money, you'll have that total protection if you run into a major situation.
Are there any scenarios in which it could be okay to travel without travel insurance?
Really, the time that you could travel without that type of insurance or any type of insurance is when you're doing it in your home province. So say you're doing a couple of hour getaway or perhaps going to visit another part of your province. You're covered by the government health plan in full wherever you are in that area. It's as soon as you leave the border of your province is where you get into some of those gray areas. So really, if you're doing interprovincial travel, you are protected. And I think that's where you just make sure you have your health card with you, understand what's out there, know where medical clinics, hospitals are when you're traveling, but you're safe in that respect.
Okay. Now let's talk about pre-existing conditions. We're going to chat with Susan. Susan, if you do have a pre-existing condition, it's probably a good idea to visit your doctor to get a checkup and ask for your physician for enough prescriptions to cover you for your time away. But what other things should Canadians consider?
I think you were really spot on there. It is really important to get that physical and get that check-in with your doctor prior to. But when you are traveling, and we have seen if you lose your luggage or perhaps it's delayed, we really encourage when you get your prescriptions issued from your pharmacist, they can issue them and have them in smaller bottles that are properly in their original documentation. So if you want to break that apart between your carry-on and your check-in, it is still all well labeled and easily identifiable. We would recommend that you carry enough prescription for the duration of your holiday in your carry-on for that very reason, should something go amiss and perhaps your luggage does not arrive at the same time that you arrive. So we really think that's an important component as being prepared for part of traveling. Another real good preparedness is Vaccinations. We are very familiar, probably in Canada, as to what is required for vaccination to travel, but it is always good to take a look at the country of destination that you're going to. Much like you would have your passport confirmed to be up to date and ready to travel, you would look at your visa recommendations that may be in a country of destination. Do have your up-to-date record of vaccinations with you in the event that that may come into play at some point. Preparedness is always the best approach when traveling. Often in destination too, some of your favorite creature comforts may not be available, such as sunscreen, perhaps maybe some anti-nausea medication. If you're going on a cruise, an anti-nausea wristband. So we recommend build your own little kind of emergency kit of supplies, bandages, some of those really kind of light duty, but really essential items that you would like to have with you. I think that really will help make your journey and help you sort of prepare. In destination, you won't always find what you're looking for. So it's best to be prepared as you are going on that vacation.
I know myself, while on vacation this summer, I got a head cold, ended up having to go to a pharmacy just to get some over-the-counter stuff, which is not over-the-counter in different countries. You have to either get a prescription or talk with a pharmacist. And I was unconvinced that what they gave me actually really helped at all. So I did not bring Tylenol, cold and flu, but that would have been great to have at the time. So great tips. Now, we do have a couple of questions from the audience. And this first question is for Neil. Neil, if you purchase annual multi-trip policy, does it cover international as well as domestic travel or just international?
It does cover domestic travel as well. So the all of Orion's CA travel insurance plans are going to provide protection for in-country, out of province, and your annual plans are no different.
Okay. We have another question actually that's coming in from the audience as well. This one is for Elliot. Elliot, COVID has changed how has COVID changed, how seniors should travel? Do many countries still require vaccinations and masking?
That's a great question. And really what we've seen over the last number of months is different countries opening up at different times. And the best thing that I would suggest is to use the Global Affairs Canada website. It has the most up-to-date information about travel advisories. But regardless of when you travel right now, or where you travel right now, it really is important to check the destination, understand any particular requirements, and make the call to your doctor if you need to have updated vaccinations and so forth. Again, it has changed in some respects, and again, it still continues to be a bit of a fluid situation.
And very fluid. I mean, you may even feel like you want to wear a mask because it's so fluid and still kind of moving, or you've decided that you're going to move past it altogether. Some great advice there. We have another question from the audience for Susan. Susan, post COVID-19, why are travel costs still so very high in comparison to the pre-COVID period? I'm assuming this is like travel related costs, costs for flights and things like that.
Yeah, across the board, we are seeing that travel has increased in price standard-wise for 2019. And a lot of factors go into that. Some of that's resources that are available. Some of it's the cost of fuel. There are a number of things that go into how that's related in. But we are seeing that, across the board, there is some increases. There are ways to travel and be able to choose your travel that would perhaps help work within a budget. A travel agent would be able to assist you with sort of finding what that best fit and best value is. But we are seeing as the industry itself rebounds and they look to add more resources and provide some of those, we are seeing some stabilization. But currently, I agree, we are seeing some changes in the price that we perhaps would have paid in 2019.
Right. Okay. So before we took the audience questions, we were talking about pre-existing conditions. And so, Neil, I have a question for you. A lot of older Canadians do have pre-existing conditions. They may be asking, can they still travel? What are your thoughts?
Yes, you can, and it might be the best time in your life to travel. I think for most people, what they want to know is very simply, am I covered or not? And a lot of the time, I think it does come down to concerns around pre-existing health conditions. And to be clear, typically pre-existing conditions are covered by your travel insurance. It's just that they come with a pre-existing condition stability period. And what that stability period requires is that for 3 months or 6 months, whatever your policy requires, there has to be no change in your health condition. That means it's not getting better, it's not getting worse. There's no new symptoms, there's no fewer symptoms, there's no new medication, there's no reduction in medication. Just any change in that would make that condition unstable. And then you have to make sure that there's no instability in that condition in that period before you depart on your trip. I think it's important, as long as you understand how your coverage works and how your coverage responds to a pre-existing condition, you'll be able to travel with peace of mind at any age.
Okay. Now, but what happens if you've booked the travel insurance in your trip and you're about a week or two away, and there's been a shift in perhaps one of your medications? I would assume that would be considered as an unstable pre-existing condition. Are there any options for travelers at that point?
So there are options to buy coverage for conditions that are unstable. With CA travel insurance from Orion, you can buy a rider that will reduce the required stability period to 7 days. But there's also another option that we have where you can complete a more in-depth medical questionnaire we refer to as individual medical underwriting. And that's going to provide coverage certainty on any condition that you've declared as part of that upfront process. So as long as that condition has been declared and you buy that individually medical underwritten product, there's no pre-ex on that condition. So you, again, can travel with absolute confidence that you are covered. I think the best thing to do is make sure you're doing your research online to understand what options are available for unstable pre-existing conditions. Speak to your carrier and make sure you understand what your pre-existing condition clauses require, and always speak to a travel agent who are very knowledgeable and can really help you navigate any of these questions you may have.
I mean, how critical, Neil, is it really to disclose that kind of stuff? Like, what can happen if we don't disclose that stuff?
Well, I think the important thing of disclosing is ensuring that you are comfortable and aware that you are traveling informed. And it's better to know in advance how your policy will respond so that you can make an informed decision about traveling, and if necessary, buy supplemental coverage if required, so that you can travel with that peace of mind. Finding yourself away in a medical crisis or injured, and finding that your policy won't respond, that's the wrong time to find out about that. You want to know up front, and there's nothing wrong with asking these questions of your carrier. And again, I can't stress it enough, speaking to a travel agent is an excellent way to get the advice that you're going to need for travel insurance.
Okay. So we've done our research and booked the right kind of travel insurance, and we're ensuring that we're taking care of our health. Now we move on to our home. Elliot, I think most of us know that we should notify our alarm companies that we're going away, but do you need to notify your insurance company that you're going on vacation?
It's a really good idea to notify your insurance company, particularly if you're traveling for more than 30 days. That's sort of the general number that's in Canada when it comes to having a home that is occupied versus unoccupied vacant. And it's important to understand because, again, just in a general term, a lot of people don't necessarily know what's in their insurance policies. And, by the potential of your insurance company having a certain requirement as the terms and conditions that you need to advise them, if you don't, you do run the risk of having a problem down the road if something were to happen. So just taking that time, spending a few minutes, advise them that you're away for 30, 60, 90 days. It's peace of mind for you that it's done. And it's one extra step in your checklist.
So under 30 days, you're good. You don't really have to notify. 30 days, it's recommend that you do notify and let them know for how long. That's what I'm hearing.
It typically is a 30-day mark. I would say that if you're feeling uncomfortable, it never hurts to make that phone call just for peace of mind. But 30 days is really that benchmark number.
Okay. Still in thinking of our home, how else can someone prepare before going on vacation?
So there's a number of things that people can do. And by and large, it really is about making your house look lived in. So you want to think about ways to keep your home looking safe. So you want to have somebody checking in on a regular basis. And that could include making sure lights are on, checking the utilities, cleaning up any snow or debris that may end up on your lawn or your driveway, checking the mail if you have home delivery of mail. All of these pieces will give everybody, or give yourself involved, the peace of mind that your house is well maintained. And it's important to have that as part of your checklist. So find a family member, find a neighbor, a friend to actually do this, because if you are gone for a considerable period of time, it's important to make sure both the interior and the exterior of your home is in good condition.
And to our panelists, we have some great audience questions coming our way. So we're going to direct this next question to Neil. Neil, insurance premiums seem to be based on the cost of care in the USA, which, as we know, is very expensive. But if I am not going to the US, why can I not get a lower premium based on the cost of medical care at my destination?
It's a very good question. What's been really interesting since the pandemic is we've seen healthcare costs globally starting to rise a lot. Yes, I think we all know traditionally we're very familiar with the healthcare costs in the States, but we are seeing it, especially in sun destinations, private medical clinics opening up, private hospitals. They're built for tourists, they're built for tourism, and their billing practices are very much aligned with the US. It is, yes, travel insurance can be expensive. I don't think there's any reason to avoid that, but it is important because the cost of healthcare outside of Canada can be expensive too. And so it's not just the US anymore that's the expensive place for healthcare. It's something that we're seeing globally. It's a continuing trend.
Okay. And question from the audience for Susan. Susan, will medication pass through airport security, considering that they don't allow a water bottle?
They don't allow a water bottle. You would bring in, and ideally one that is empty. You could fill it on the other side. Again, medication, if it's properly labeled in packaging that's from your pharmacist that's been dispensed, again, following those guidelines of size. So you do still need to adhere to those size requirements. We really do encourage, again, have it properly labeled and have it properly declared and identified, provided within the bags that they use. You would be able to take that through. The liquid, though, you would need to fill, and they would have water on the other side should you need to take it immediately upon entering in.
Right. And I think too, if anybody is, diabetic listening to as well, I think using gel packs over water bottles will keep things insulin nice and cold, and having the actual prescription on it, right?
Yep.
Will, with your name and everything, helps to determine that as well.
Yes.
Okay, a question from the audience for Elliot. I don't drive and do not have a CA membership. What are my travel insurance options?
That's a great question. So you don't need to be a driver to enjoy the benefits of travel insurance and discounts. It really is talking to a travel professional. It is making that call and understanding based on your own personal situation, where you're traveling to, for how long. But certainly it is important that you talk to a professional and really get something that is tailored to your travel location and your needs and your specific situation. But given the fact that you are not a driver, that would have no bearing on the impact of that, and certainly make sure you're well protected when traveling.
Because they're all individual products, right? Like CA membership is one thing, insurance for your automobile is another thing, travel insurance is another thing. And I personally love to park my car when I go on vacation and take transportation in the location that I'm going, walk, that kind of stuff like that. That's not always possible, but I don't think, as Elliot mentioned, you necessarily need that. So thank you for that. Now, when CARP sent out the invitation for the webinar, they got a tremendous response, not only with people interested in watching, but many with questions of their own. So we were talking about, for people who are watching and have questions about traveling and planning and budget-friendly destinations, we want to encourage you to connect with a trusted CA travel agent or your trusted travel agent that you work with consistently. They're going to be able to work with you to find you a destination that works for your needs and desires. But we're really focusing here today on travel safety as much as possible. So now we get to the part of the webinar where we answer some of the questions sent in by the audience. Elliot, we hear about changes to travel advisories, visa and passport requirements, vaccination requirements. Where do you start when you are trying to figure out what you need?
So really the important thing when it comes to all of this is doing your homework throughout, including up until the time of travel. So even if you research something today and you're not traveling until December, things may change. So don't have that false sense of security. So make sure that you're researching. But the question then becomes, where do I research? So there's a couple of places to go. The first thing is talking to a trusted travel agent. Having people who are knowledgeable in the industry can provide peace of mind, can provide the information that you need. That's number one. Number two is going to the CARP website, carp.ca/CAA, which have lots of information with respect to travel. And the third place, if you're doing international travel, is to look at the Global Affairs Canada website. That has all the information about travel advisory, the different levels, the types of risks that are out there, even information about what you need to do to prepare as a traveler. So that's, again, going back to the first point about talking to a trusted travel agent, doing your homework and looking at a reputable site like the government site, Global Affairs Canada, is the way to go.
I always come across so intelligent with my group of friends because I'm on Global Affairs Canada looking up all the information, and people are like, where did you get that information? I'm like, it's all there. Everything you need to know in terms of your vaccinations, requirements, safety things, it's all there. It's a great website and a great resource. Another question from the audience, Neil, is there an age limit at which the insurance company will no longer cover a person?
Good question. I did see another question like that pop up as well. So I think the thing to remember is there is coverage available no matter what your age is. Different carriers are going to take a different approach to how they limit or exclude certain risk, to use an insurance term, and particularly around how pre-existing conditions are treated. And we did talk about that. But I think it depends really on where you're sourcing your travel insurance from. As an example, credit cards or group plans, as an example, they often come with certain age limits, or the coverage will change at a certain age. Typically, as an example, credit cards will limit coverage substantially at age 65. And that might drop from 21 days of coverage, then down to 3 days of coverage or no coverage. So I think the important thing is whether you're buying individual coverage or you're relying on a credit card or a group plan for your coverage, is make sure you spend the time to look at what your policy says. And if you have any questions, again, contact your carrier with those questions or speak to a travel agent. I know I keep pushing on that, but travel agents are licensed and very knowledgeable on travel insurance, and it's always best to make sure that you get these questions answered before you travel.
I know myself, my dad used a travel agent to book his trip and everything. And when he was away and I needed to connect with her, she was great. She printed everything out. He's not a digital type of a guy. She had everything here there for him and really did help him, do that low tech kind of experience, but answer any questions that I had in relation to him as well. So that was super helpful. A question from the audience for Susan. Susan, do you have any advice for solo travelers?
I do have some advice. Solo travel is huge right now. It was really booming in 2019, and we're really seeing it come back strong. And I think for that solo traveler, there is more option available. I recommend traveling with a solo group. Many companies do offer solo group travel. We had trips to Lake Como, we had trips to Ireland, we have upcoming ones to Thailand, very in demand. So I do think that if you travel with an experienced group, and often they're hosted, I think that's a great opportunity. I think for solo travelers, and any traveler really, leave a copy of your itinerary at home as well. Make sure that a family member has that itinerary, has that copy of to where you're going and how you're going. When we do talk about working with a trusted travel agent, as a solo traveler, you can have those conversations too about some companies have times where they perhaps might waive a single supplement. Some cruise lines offer the opportunity to travel, with somebody else who you may not know, and you would be matched up. So there's a really a great way of seeing how you can travel, and not to be daunted if you're a solo traveler. There are many of you out there all looking to travel, and I think there's some tremendous options and opportunity for solo traveling now.
Susan, what about gear, travel gear? What kind of things do you need to keep yourself safe while you're traveling?
One of the things I really lead out with, no matter how you're traveling and what you're traveling with, is situational awareness. So you really want to be mindful of where you're traveling, what the group size is, what the crowds are like, and really preparing to keep yourself and your valuables and your documentation with you. So when you talk about gear, there are bags, backpacks, crossbody bags that have locking mechanisms. They have slash-proof straps. They have RFID protection, which really helps with the scanning of your information. Really, unfortunately, opportunity is out there for all, and some are more and more creative. And so our partners in merchandise have really come up with more and more of those kind of security measures within your gear. I would also just take a moment to talk about a carry-on luggage. That's a hot topic right now, is taking a carry-on. It's really important to take a look at what the size requirements are, not just in North America, but should you be traveling internationally, should you be on a charter. So do take a look at the website. Your travel agent can also, of course, help you with that, but it is really important to take a look at what that requirement is. You're allowed that one carry-on, you're allowed that one personal item. I know many who have traveled have seen that people perhaps are taking more of that than on the carry-on. But our due diligence is to really ensure that you're aware of what you have. Another question while we're talking about gear is the class of fares. Some may waive those fees of checked baggage. We get some travelers who are perhaps purchasing one large suitcase and they split and they each take a carry-on, but we really look for having the compliance with carry-on. And then really it is important to take those safety gear, locking, identification tags, slash-proof. Carry your backpack in front of you if you want to have a backpack. If you don't have a backpack that has those mechanisms, you can certainly buy a lock and put that on. So we really do encourage that you have some of those items when you travel, and to have that situational awareness wherever you may go, whether it's in a large market crowd or you're just going to Las Vegas for a show. So
I myself had the experience of when I left Toronto, nobody checked my carry-on baggage. But in Portugal, when I was coming back, they checked my carry-on baggage. And if it did not fit into the actual carrier, I would have to actually check it at a cost. So very good tips from there as well to understand what are the dimensions for different airlines and things like that. A question from the audience for Elliot: how frequently should your home be checked when you're away?
That's a really good question. I think part of it comes down to preference and what your peace of mind is going to be. But I would say every few days to make sure, especially during the winter months, is important, because if you don't have snow removal for your driver, you want to make sure that's done based on winter weather events. You want to do that. You want to make sure mail is picked up, check the utilities and so forth. So I would strongly suggest at least once or twice a week. But, again, increasing that depending on weather events that require you to make sure that the driveway and walkways are shoveled so that your house continues to look fully lived in.
Is there a way, switching to travel insurance, is there a way to reduce the cost of travel insurance? Is a deductible an option or a good idea?
Yeah, actually, deductibles are a great option. It's a great way to have influence over the what you end up paying for your travel insurance. And with CAA travel insurance, there's a variety of deductibles, and you can cut the cost of your insurance by upwards of 45%. Now, it may not be the right decision for everybody. I think, again, that's something you have to think about, because with a deductible, of course, there's going to be a certain amount of claims that, an initial portion of the claim that won't be covered, that you'd have to self-insure essentially. But if you're not particularly concerned about maybe, a $500 claim because you've, a cut or a sprain that has to be treated at a clinic, and you're more concerned about, a $100,000 claim where you're worried about having to go into debt or possibly lose a house, which you want to protect against. And that's where deductibles can really help you make a decision between, can I travel or not? Because some people may be in a position where they're comfortable taking on some of that low level risk, understanding that the emergency assistance is still there to help you navigate it, even if the $500 claim might be yours, but the large claims are protected.
may affect work.
And it looks
Does
like
this-
we have one of our participants
doctor's
here with
appointments?
mute.
Yeah.
Could I get Andrew to actually mute himself, please? Excellent, thank you. Our research indicates that snowbirds are quite diligent in purchasing emergency medical travel insurance, but is there something they tend to overlook? And that question is, Neil, is over to you.
Thanks. I mean, based on the questions that we're seeing, I think it supports that snowbirds are probably the most well-informed where travel insurance is concerned. I think the most important thing that I would want to convey is that different carriers approach the travel insurance differently. It is not apples to apples across the board. As I've mentioned before, they can take a different approach to how pre-existing conditions are treated. Sometimes there are different limitations on specifically heart or lung conditions. So it really does depend on where you're sourcing your travel insurance from. And I think the most important thing I want to convey is do not make any assumptions about your travel insurance protection. Please, the most important thing is to actually take some time, spend a few minutes to look at what the maximum trip duration is. What are the limitations from a pre-existing health condition perspective? Are there anything specific to heart or lung conditions? And have that conversation with your carrier or a travel agent if you have any uncertainty at all.
Okay. Susan, what are some safer destinations you would recommend considering at this time?
I think if you've taken that due diligence and taken a look at global affairs and really seeing where those advisories are, there are tremendous options of where you can go and where you can travel. If we're talking about what's popular, what we're really seeing people going to and coming back saying it was the best time, we're seeing destinations like Portugal. If you're talking about having perhaps a more economical way of traveling, a long stay in Portugal has been a very popular item. You can get a studio apartment, if you will. You can really control those expenses. So those are the type of things that we're seeing. There are budgets that can be fit in on a variety of things. When we talk about cruising has come back like never before. It's raced on back. Cruising can be as contained as you'd like. We have some people who have been doing 30 and 40-day cruises. They can control their budget by really just their foods are met. They can choose what excursions they do and don't partake in, and it is a bit of a controllable way to still be able to travel within a budget. But I think really from looking at safety, if we follow and you look at where those guidelines are, and again, your travel agent will really help you on what those current situations are. They'll be able to articulate for you. It's okay to ask those questions that you don't necessarily know what that advisory means, and they will provide that guidance to ensure that you get to where you're needing to go and that you have a destination that fits for what you need it to be.
A copy of this webinar along with the travel tips will be sent to participants post the webinar, but I want to redirect everybody now. We're going to take a look at some of the slides here, recap some of the things that we have been talking about. And the first and top thing is to make sure that you check your travel advisories. Research those documents that you need ahead of time and understand cancellation policies, all really good tips. The next thing is you want to research your transportation, protect your ID, and share your travel plans, and also know your rights. Invest in luggage. We heard Susan talking about good luggage that won't allow any slashing or have RFID blocking. Don't look like a tourist. I know that sometimes is unavoidable, but trying to not pull out a map, I think, might help. And leverage technology as much as possible. The next thing, when it comes to health and safety top tips, you want to research your travel insurance. That things like emergency medical, trip cancellation, vacation packages, riders for pre-existing conditions. And you also want to check the limits or restrictions on your credit card. The next health safety tip is visit your doctor. Prep your medications ahead of time. Make sure that they're in the bottles. Plan for vaccinations that you need, not just for upset stomachs, but also for COVID. Pack an emergency health kit. And prepare your home for home safety tips. Prepare your home for departure. Set up those house calls ahead of time. Alert your home insurance provider if you're going to be away for longer than 30 days. Alert your security company. You want to pause deliveries or put your mail on hold. Mind your valuables and inspect your home's interior. still with homes. We want to walk the perimeter, unplug the appliances, and prepare for the weather. So, got questions? We want to hear from you. Call 1-833-673-3030 or visit carp.ca/CAA. And someone there will do their best to answer their questions. So, on behalf of CAA and our CARP partners, we want to thank you and thank everyone who took part and time out of their busy day to connect and to watch. Goodbye. See you soon and stay safe.